Most writers can only dream of earning a $5 million advance from a publisher, but this author, Abraham Verghese, actually did it. In 2023, The Covenant of Water went up for auction and earned a $5 million advance. But then it wasn't a flop when it published either. It went on to huge success. It sold 2 million copies worldwide, spent 37 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, was selected as Oprah's 101st book club pick, and won the Writer in the World Prize and the Edward Stanford Travel Writing Prize. What we're going to do is we're going to break down the first chapter of his book to see what the first chapter of a $5 million book looks like. And it's under 1,000 words. It's not very long. You can find it and read it online. I'm going to present a lot of excerpts to you as well in this video. But there are 12 principles that I think you can take away from this first chapter that you can apply to your own work. Although I don't make any guarantees about $1 million advances, but hey, I mean, you never know. You can hope. Let's start with the very first technique that he uses: emotional cattle prods. In my book, The Linchpin Writer, I talk about emotional cattle prods. And these are just events that happen in a novel that come pre-freighted with a lot of emotion for the reader. Birth, death, anniversaries, people cheating on each other. All of these things have a lot of emotional power to them. And in The Covenant of the Water, we see that the very first sentence of this book starts with a huge emotional cattle prod. She is 12 years old, and she will be married in the morning. So there are 5 elements to the sentence that I think make it worthy of being the beginning to a $5 million book. First of all, the emotional cattle prod is marriage, right? Any marriage. But obviously the second point is that this is a particularly disastrous marriage. She is 12 years old getting married to a 40-year-old. A third thing that I think this sentence does really well is that it creates anticipation, because we're not at the wedding ceremony, we are on the night before, so it gives us something to look forward to in the story. We know that in the next chapter or the next chapter, we're going to get to experience that wedding. The fourth thing this first sentence does well is it creates a ticking clock. There is a certain amount of time elapsing before this poor 12-year-old gets married. And the fifth thing I think we can learn from this is the simplicity of the sentence itself. It's told in present tense. The words are all like first grade words. It's not very complex. Anybody can understand it. It's very short. It's very accessible. A second thing that we can learn from this first chapter is to have the quotable line. So it's a great idea in your book to have something that will surprise the reader, that is a line that just sort of sticks in their brain and they're like, oh. And this is the second paragraph in the book. Mother and daughter lie on the mat, their wet cheeks glued together. The saddest day of a girl's life is the day of her wedding, her mother says. After that, God willing, it gets better. So this is a very counterintuitive line. We normally think of weddings as being happy and celebratory, but in this case, obviously, it's a very disturbing marriage. There's also a good amount of character building that we see here. We are seeing the mother weep for this daughter who she cannot protect, who she is powerless to protect, and she has to send her 12-year-old off to get married. Now let's look at the third thing Abraham Verghese does really well in The Covenant of Water. It is sensory details. So this is a book which takes place in India, and he does a wonderful job grounding the reader in the sensory delights of this exotic place. So pay attention to the order here. He doesn't start with sensory description, right? He starts with the event, 12-year-old getting married, the mother's emotion, and then he steps back a little bit and describes this environment. Look at this paragraph. It is so rich in sensory delights. We have a lot of sound with breathing, snoring, wooden walls exhaling, the scuffling of the dog. And then we have this really fun portmanteau of the brain fever bird. I think this goes a long way in helping the reader understand the author understands this place and knows this place, and we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. It also does a great job describing visually what things look like, because even though she can't see anything, it's dark, she imagines a bird looking down and what that bird would see. The roofs, the lagoon, the creek, the paddy fields. Okay, so now we understand what's going on and we understand the place that we are in. What is the next step that he takes to sort of coax the reader into this book? Glad you asked. This is point number 4. Intimacy. She starts talking to this landscape. Goodbye, lagoon. Goodbye Creek. So basically what this does is it helps the reader get inside her brain. This is a really important step to help the reader start to sympathize even more with her, right? We're not seeing the story from an outside perspective. We're seeing it from inside her, what she's thinking, what she's feeling, what she's seeing. And what this teaches us is that the closer the reader is to your character, the more they can identify with them. The other thing that we can learn from this is, why does your novel start in the place that it does? Why doesn't it start in a different place? Well, I think what Abraham Verghese is using here is the "and then one day" formula, where basically it says like, okay, and then one day, this little girl was required to leave her home and everything that she knew and go marry a 40-year-old. This is really a classic story trope of like person leaves town, right? That's the beginning of the story. Everything launches from that moment. So what is the fifth thing that this book does so well? It is to establish opposition. Who is your villain? Who is your antagonist? If you think that you can wait until, I don't know, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4 to establish the oppositional character, well, I mean, that's tough to pull off, right? The sooner you do it, the better. So right here, we see in this first chapter, literally the fifth thing in the book is the uncle. So in this paragraph, we learn that the uncle is the one behind pushing this girl out and forcing her to get married. And if it isn't sleazy enough to be marrying off your 12-year-old niece, the paragraph emphasizes his sleaziness by the oily voice and also the fact that this seems rushed. Listen, the reason why protagonists appear so early in books is that readers like to have someone to cheer for. But the converse is also true. Readers really enjoy having someone to cheer against. And if you drop your antagonist on the first page, on the second page, we immediately have someone to root against, and that's really pleasurable. Look, if you want help with your book, I have 2 ways to help you. Bookfox Academy is a collection of 10 courses with more than 230 videos and worksheets and quizzes to help you with your novel. And also Bookfox Lab is my coaching program where you work very closely hand in hand with a mentor, meeting with them one-on-one and getting feedback on your writing to help you produce the best book that you can. I'll put links to both of those in the description below so you can check them out. What is the sixth thing that happens inside this 1,000-word first chapter? I'll tell you, it is number 6, conflict. So we have a couple different levels of conflict here. One is between the mother and her daughter. The mother is kind of like pitying her daughter because the mother is so helpless in this scenario. And secondly, the mother is trying to like justify why this is happening. Like, I don't have any control over this house, over this situation. And she can't even speak freely because she's worried that the lizard have ears, meaning she's worried that someone's going to eavesdrop on their conversation and, you know, she's going to get in trouble for saying this. Now, that might not be what you think of as being conflict. You know, you think of conflict as, I don't know, 2 people shouting at each other or something. But I think conflict comes in a lot of different forms. Sometimes it's a little subtler, sometimes a little more lower grade. So there's conflict between the mother and the uncle because she's afraid of him hearing her. And there's also conflict between the mother and the daughter. This 7th thing he does is probably the most difficult thing for authors to pull off, and it is complex psychology. The mother knows this is a nightmare. The daughter knows this is a nightmare. The reader knows this is a nightmare. But check out this super cheery dialogue in the face of this nightmare. Oh, how different will your new life be? You'll be doing the same things at the same holidays. It's a fine match. This is a man who has money. La da 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 da. Why is the mother saying this? Because she's trying to armor her daughter with enough optimism that she can survive this. So she's putting on this false cheeriness to sort of try to help her daughter. And maybe on some level, she's like trying to convince herself as well. Like, yeah, there's a silver lining to this. Sure. It is such a good idea in the first chapter of your book, or really any place in your book, to have your character say something they don't really mean and give them a reason for why they are saying that. This is like a shortcut to find depth in your book, and it makes it much more entertaining for the reader when we don't have to take everything on the page as like face value. If you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, please subscribe now. And if you are enjoying this video and you haven't yet liked it, please like it now. Step number 8. Step number 8. This is a great concept to do in the first chapter of your book. It is Widen the Web. The goal in your fiction is to give the reader a wider sense of your universe without seeming like you're trying to cram a whole bunch of information inside. This chapter, the Covenant of Water chapter, is one of the most compressed chapters I've ever seen. I mean, I'm making a video on it because I was so surprised about how much he is pulling off in under 1,000 words. And yet, despite that compression, it never feels like he's shotgunning a whole bunch of information at you. But check out this short paragraph and see how much information he's putting in. We learn that, the man she's marrying is 40. We have this bit of a cultural surprise that there was a marriage broker who arranged this whole thing. And she overhears a very important piece of gossip, which figures in prominently throughout the whole rest of the book, this knowledge that her aunt died from drowning. Something you might want to do at the beginning of your book is to look to see whether you have a paragraph which is a compressed paragraph that gives a whole bunch of information to the reader, and then have the paragraph before it and the paragraph after it go back to dialogue and being in the scene. You only step out and give a whole bunch of information for a very short amount of time, or else the reader's going to get lost and be like, where's the story? 3 more points, and they are all super valuable. Let's look at number 9. Quick and dirty backstory. So check out this paragraph, which is where the daughter is thinking about her memories of her father. Now, previously in the paragraph, it sort of hinted at her father's absence, like all the furniture is sort of empty and there's a ghostly impression left by the father. But in this paragraph, we learn yeah, the father's dead. He wouldn't allow his 12-year-old to be married if he was still alive. Now, the temptation for writers, especially at the beginning of a novel, is to spend way too much time describing the character and going into that backstory. But he does it in a very compressed way. We learn what the father looked like. We can see the emotional connection between him and his daughter. And then also the stakes are raised because the father had vowed never to let this happen to his daughter. And yet it's happening to her. It's such a powerful thing to start your book with something that the character or someone close to them vowed would never happen, right? That's a great starting point. This 10th point is probably the most overlooked one when writers are beginning their book, and it is the decision. So there's a huge danger in this chapter. I'm talking about a huge giant sinkhole that threatens to swallow this chapter up whole. And it is the girl's passivity, right? If this little girl is sort of at the whims of all these adults and they're making all the decisions for her and she has no agency, she's not choosing to do anything, then that's a problem, right? She doesn't seem like an active character in any way. But Abraham Verghese is far too smart to let this happen. So at this point in the first chapter, he makes a very important decision to give this girl a choice and to let her make a decision. So look at this sentence here. Right? She knows this is the terrible thing, but she lifts her chin, she squares her shoulders, she vows to meet this upcoming day and to just figure it out. That makes her into a strong character. It makes her into a character we want to root for. So please, please, please find a way in that first chapter, especially if your character is at the whims of, fate or weather or other people, find a way that they can make a decision, even if it's just a small decision. It will help us feel like this character is coming alive and want to go on a journey with them. All right, we have 2 more to go. Let's look at number 11. Establish the theme. This book takes place inside of a Christian community in India, and so that faith colors the character's perception of the whole world. And this is something that the mother and the daughter cling to when they're being horribly abused within this culture. They quote scripture, they talk about maintaining the faith, they talk about the Bible, they talk about God's promises, they talk about sovereignty of God looking after her, and they even quote from the Bible. And there's this double meaning here too, that she lost her earthly father, but at the same time, the mother's trying to tell her that her heavenly father will still be looking after her. So let me say this to you, whatever the theme is in your book, is it a good idea to bring it up in the first chapter? Yes. Yes, it is. Absolutely. If you can find a way to start to weave that in, it is not too early to bring up those themes, even if it's just for a sentence or 2. That's always a good idea. And the 12th and final step that I think Abraham Verghese does really well is connect to the title. So your title is a promise, right? It's a promise that, hey, this title connects to something inside the book. So the title here is The Covenant of Water. And what we see in this first chapter is water has a really important part to play. We have water all around them in the creek, in the paddy field, but we also have that ant who drowns, and that's, connection to water as well. And the father's mist coming from his mouth, and also the urine that runs black. So water is both a wonderful sense of place and it is a killer. But I also have to say that the title isn't fully explained in this first chapter, right? It's alluded to like, hey, water's going to be really important in this book, but the complete explanation happens much later in the book about what covenant of water means. So I think the principle that he's following here is already, but not yet. And this is a principle I talk about in The Linchpin Writer, meaning that like you start to talk about something, you start to reveal something, but you don't fully reveal it. We start to get a sense that water is important, but we still don't fully get how the covenant of water is going to play into the plot. Hey, do not forget to check out Bookfox Lab and Bookfox Academy. We would love to help you write a book that perhaps could win a $5 million advance. We can all hope for that. Yeah, make sure to check out those in the description below. And hey, write hard, write early, write often. Happy writing.